Breaking news. The USAID building sits closed to employees after a memo was issued advising agency personnel to work remotely in Washington, D.C., US, February 3, 2025. Reuters' Kent Nishimura file photo purchase licensing rights, opens new tab summary lawsuit challenges. Trump's USAID dismantling actions include pausing all US foreign aid, fewer than 300 USAID employees to remain, sources say, Feb 6, Reuters. The largest US government workers' union and an association of foreign service workers sued the Trump administration on Thursday in an effort to reverse its aggressive dismantling of the US Agency for International Development. The lawsuit opens new tab, filed in Washington, D.C. federal court by the American Federation of Government Employees and the American Foreign Service Association, seeks an order blocking what it says are unconstitutional and illegal actions that have created a global humanitarian crisis. Those actions include President Donald Trump's order on January 20th, the day he was inaugurated, pausing all US foreign aid. That was followed by orders from the State Department halting USAID projects around the world, agency computer systems going offline, and staff abruptly laid off or placed on leave. Ladies and gentlemen, gather around. This video is about to uncover the current news. Get ready to be amazed and enlightened. Please hit the like button to show your support. Share it with your friends and family to spread our eye-opening extra narrative. And don't forget to follow us to stay tuned for more. And always remember to tell us something we need to know, so buckle up as we dive into the news in full. The lawsuit names Trump and the State and Treasury Departments as defendants. The White House and the departments did not immediately respond to requests for comment. The gutting of the agency has largely been overseen by businessman Elon Musk, the world's richest man and a close Trump ally spearheading the president's effort to shrink the federal bureaucracy. On Monday, Musk wrote on X, the social media platform he owns, that he and his employees spent the weekend feeding USAID into the wood chipper. Not a single one of defendants' actions to dismantle USAID were taken pursuant to congressional authorization, the lawsuit said. And pursuant to federal statute, Congress is the only entity that may lawfully dismantle the agency. The agency's website now states that as of midnight on Friday, all USAID direct hire personnel will be placed on administrative leave globally, with the exception of designated personnel responsible for mission-critical functions, core leadership, and specially designated programs. The Trump administration plans to keep fewer than 300 employees out of more than 10,000, sources told Reuters earlier on Thursday. The agency's collapse has had disastrous humanitarian consequences, Thursday's lawsuit said, including shutting down efforts to fight malaria and HIV. Already, 300 babies that would not have had HIV now do. Thousands of girls and women will die from pregnancy and childbirth. Trump's foreign aid freeze and the shutdown of USAID have also crippled global efforts to relieve hunger, leaving about 500,000 metric tons of food worth $340 million in limbo. The lawsuit alleges that dissolving USAID, which was established as an independent agency in a 1998 law passed by Congress, is beyond Trump's authority under the Constitution and violates his duty to faithfully execute the nation's laws. It seeks a temporary and eventually permanent order from the court restoring USAID's funding, reopening its offices and blocking further orders to dissolve it. The lawsuit alleges that dissolving USAID, which was established as an independent agency in a 1998 law passed by Congress, is beyond Trump's authority under the Constitution and violates his duty to faithfully execute the nation's laws. It seeks a temporary and eventually permanent order from the court, restoring USAID's funding, reopening its offices, and blocking further orders to dissolve it. Let's dive into another news. Trump pressures OPEC to lower oil prices, aims to end Ukraine war. Trump believes that lowering oil prices by increasing OPEC output will force Russia to end the war in Ukraine. The Kremlin has dismissed Trump's threats of additional sanctions. Experts are skeptical that Saudi Arabia and OPEC will cooperate with Trump's strategy. Now the news in full. US President Donald Trump hasn't been able to get Kremlin leader Vladimir Putin to agree to talks to end the war in Ukraine, so he is turning to Saudi Arabia for help. During a January 23rd speech to the global business elite gathered at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, Trump called on Saudi Arabia and its allies in OPEC to ramp up oil output, a move that would push down crude prices, choking a key revenue source for Moscow to fund its war. "I'm also going to ask Saudi Arabia and OPEC to bring down the cost of oil. You got to bring it down, which frankly I'm surprised they didn't do before the election. I was a little surprised by that. If the price came down, the Russia-Ukraine war would end immediately," Trump said. During his 2024 presidential campaign, Trump made ending Russia's 3-year full-scale invasion of Ukraine a priority and has been seeking to set up a meeting with Putin since winning election in November. However, the Kremlin has seemingly refrained from entering talks with analysts, saying Putin believes he is winning the war and thus sees no reason to stop the fighting. Russia has been gaining territory in eastern Ukraine at the fastest clip since the start of the war as Ukraine struggles to recruit troops. A day after he was inaugurated as president on January 20th, Trump said he would impose more sanctions on Russia to get it to the table without saying what exactly he would target. He reiterated the warning the next day, but Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said on January 23rd, before Trump spoke in Davos, that Moscow did not see any particularly new elements here in what Trump said. Under Trump's predecessor, Joe Biden, the United States imposed sweeping sanctions on Russia's economy, including its oil industry. Russia's economy is heavily dependent on the export of oil, which accounts for more than 30% of its federal budget revenue. A decline in either Russian oil exports or the oil price would further strain the country's already troubled economy. However, further sanctioning Russia's oil industry, such as designating its largest oil company, Rosneft, or more of its shadow oil fleet, could lead to a jump in global energy prices unless other countries ramp up output. Saudi Arabia and some of its allies in OPEC are capable of boosting oil output quickly. Saudi Arabia currently has spare capacity of about 3 million barrels a day, while the United Arab Emirates, UAE, has about 1 million barrels. The spare capacity is the result of OPEC countries agreeing to crucial output to support high oil prices. Russia, a member of OPEC+, exports about 6.6 million barrels of oil and oil products a day. Prior to his speech to WEF participants, Trump spoke with Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince in his first call with a foreign leader since taking office earlier this week. The two discussed Middle East stability, combating terrorism, and boosting trade, according to a White House readout of the call. Chris Weafer, an oil industry expert and founder of the macro advisory consulting firm, said he did not think Trump would be able to get the Saudis or other OPEC members to boost output to pressure the Kremlin on Ukraine. It is most unlikely that Saudi Arabia, the UAE, or the other OPEC producers will either want to engage in such a political move against fellow OPEC Plus member Russia or to take any action which would result in them losing export earnings and giving a bigger market share to US producers, Weafer told RFE/RL. OPEC producers are still angry at the total disregard from Washington when the shale revolution boosted US crude production and exports, taking market share from them, he said. David Oxley, chief climate and commodities economist at Capital Economics, said that while Saudi Arabia has drifted away from the United States in recent years, Trump does have solid ties with the country's leadership. There have been signs of warming relations of late, and Trump is known to have good relations with Crown Prince MBS and also Saudi's Public Investment Fund, Oxley said in a January 23rd note. He added that Saudi Arabia has also expressed frustration with other OPEC members for producing more than their quota and could open the floodgates to regain global market share. This explicit invitation from Trump might be the cover that Saudi needs to open the spigots, he said. In another news, oil and gas prices dropped dramatically on trade war fears. While potential tariffs on Canada and Mexico have been making all the headlines recently, it is the threat of a prolonged trade war between China and the US that has sparked demand fears and pushed prices down. Canada's oil industry has dodged the bullet with the United States' 25% tariff threat, only to be penalised by a 10% levy on Saturday and then subsequently lifted for a grace period of 30 days, taking oil sands producers to a rollercoaster of emotion this week. Almost all of Canada's 4 million BD flow to the United States, with some 65% of those exports taken in by refiners in the Midwest, a region that has no other supply route because the infrastructure in the Gulf Coast is geared towards exporting light barrels from the US. Analysts have found that Canadian tariffs would have the biggest impact on US Atlantic coast gasoline markets, with a 25% tariff on imports hiking prices by $0.50 per gallon to 2.5 USG, whilst higher oil sourcing costs adding some 0.20 per gallon to Midwest gasoline prices. Bypassing US sanctions would be easier for Mexico, as all its US-bound flows are seaborne and could be rerouted to Asia. However, Valero Energy's term contract with Pemex could become a point of legal contention. The US-Canada tariff flare-up lifted oil prices for a brief period, but with the 30-day postponement of those restrictive measures, the oil markets are now assessing the impacts of another trade war, a potentially even bigger one between the United States and China. With ICE Brent dropping dramatically to $74 per barrel, the main fear is that the US-China spat could seriously damage oil demand growth this year, already under pressure from weakening margins. Gold prices hit record highs on tariff frenzy. Prices of the bullion skyrocketed to an all-time high this week, with Monday seeing gold hitting $2,830.49 per ounce in intraday trading, driven by market uncertainty surrounding Donald Trump's tariffs and the probability of retaliatory trade wars. OPEC ditches the EIA as secondary source. In its Monday JMMC ministerial meeting, OPEC Plus agreed to stick to its policy of gradually returning cut production from April 2025 onwards, all the while scrapping the US Energy Information Administration and Rystad Energy as secondary sources. Ukraine hits major Russian refinery again. Following last week's strike on Russia's Ryazan refinery, Ukrainian forces struck another refinery in the Volga region, the 300,000 BD Volgograd plant that is the largest in southern Russia, whilst also targeting a condensate splitter in the city of Astrakhan. Now the news about restricting birthright citizenship. Judge blocks Trump's bid to restrict birthright citizenship. A US federal judge has blocked Donald Trump's attempt to end birthright citizenship for children born to parents who are in the country illegally or temporarily. Today, virtually every baby born on US soil is a US citizen upon birth, Maryland District Judge Deborah Boardman ruled. That is the law and tradition of our country. The ruling extends the existing pause on Trump's 20th of January executive order until the legal process plays out, which could take months or even years. It comes 2 weeks after a federal judge in Seattle called Trump's order blatantly unconstitutional and issued a 14-day restraining order. The judge will hold another hearing when that ruling expires on Thursday. The Trump administration can appeal against the ruling and is expected to do so, say experts. Ending birthright citizenship is part of President Trump's drive to remove illegal immigrants from the US. His order, which was scheduled to come into effect on 19th of February, would have withheld automatic citizenship rights from newborns if neither of their parents was a US citizen or lawful permanent resident. On Wednesday, Judge Boardman ruled that Trump's order runs counter to our nation's 250-year history of citizenship by birth. The United States Supreme Court has resoundingly rejected the President's interpretation of the Citizenship Clause of the 14th Amendment, she said. In fact, no court in the country has ever endorsed the President's interpretation. This court will not be the first. At the heart of the case is the interpretation of the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, adopted shortly after the Civil War, which states in part, "All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States." The Trump administration argues that the clause excludes children of non-citizens who are in the US unlawfully, and added that the order is an integral part of the president's goal to address the country's broken immigration system and the ongoing crisis at the southern border. Since the late 19th century, the constitutional amendment has been interpreted by courts including the US Supreme Court as automatically granting citizenship rights to children born on US soil, with a few exceptions such as the children of diplomats. But conservatives have long argued birthright citizenship is a magnet for illegal immigration and is being exploited through birth tourism, where individuals come to the US to have a child who will become an American citizen. The Maryland challenge to the executive order was brought by two immigrant rights groups that filed the lawsuit on behalf of 5 pregnant women. In a statement after the judge's ruling, one of the pregnant women said the decision will give mothers like me a bit of temporary relief as we navigate pregnancy and the uncertain future for our babies. The woman, who was identified by the pseudonym Trinidad Garcia, also said, "All I have wanted is to focus on my baby being born healthy and safe, but instead, even though my baby will be born in the US, I have been worried that they will be denied a right is that guaranteed under the Constitution, the right to be a US citizen." According to 22 Democratic state attorneys general who have brought lawsuits to stop Trump's policy, more than 150,000 babies would be denied citizenship each year under the executive order. An additional hearing, for a case that involves more than a dozen states challenging Trump's order, is scheduled for Friday in Massachusetts. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel to show your support. Share it with your friends and family to spread our eye-opening extra narrative. And don't forget to follow us to stay tuned for more. And always remember to tell us something we need to know. Stay blessed and God bless you.